Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I am your host every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. We have been doing this for 5 years. 5 years every Tuesday night. And a couple of you have been with me that long. So I'm excited to have another night with our industry expert. It's going to be J.E. Steiner, who is with Flex. So we're going to get to him shortly. But I also want to make sure that everybody knows in the house that I'm also a loan originator, a senior director at Old Capital Lending. And we know how to close loans, especially in multifamily. And that's most of the people that come here do multifamily. We do about 93% of our business is in multifamily, but we will look at other asset classes. I just had a mobile home park, ground up construction. We do it all. So if you're working on a deal, I'd love the opportunity to take a look at it. We're going to need your T12, your rent roll, the offering memorandum, and your underwriting. And we'll figure out, based on those updated financials, how much loan dollars we're going to bring. Remember, we're your biggest partner. We're going to bring 65 to 80% of the loan, hopefully, because you're putting in the right price. That's the problem. People don't stop by, get a quote, and they just put in an LOI and they find out that, oh, the lender's only going to bring in 58%. So now you have to go out to investors and try and make up for that, especially if you have an accepted LOI, or you have to retrade it. And in this market, it is tough to be paying the same price that you thought it was and it closed. So things are happening. We don't have a decrease in rate yet, and hoping for a couple at least this year. So we are excited about tonight, as I am excited every Tuesday night. Again, I've been doing this for 5 years. My family knows I am not available on Tuesdays. But tonight, I get to introduce you to a company, Flex, with J.E. Steiner. And the reason why I'm excited about it is because we, as a general partner on our deal in Houston, we use this product. So I thought, hey, why not have them come to Zoom at 8? And by the way, she is managing over 5,000 units right now, and 10 to 20% of the residents are using Flex. So it's a great product. So have at it. Let's hear it from you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're excited about Flex. I'm obviously super excited about Flex, but to break it down, Flex is, in its simple form, a financial amenity to offer to your residents that guarantees you full rent, carport, pet fees, utilities, whatever you guys put on that ledger, on the first, and it allows residents to align their rent payment typically with their income schedule, but on a schedule that better fits their needs, their preference throughout the month. And as you guys are well aware, like Julie just mentioned, every opportunity nowadays to differentiate yourself or be able to lease units quicker or decrease vacancy and increase renewals, the whole operational side of things is crucial right now. And so being able to offer Flex is just an additional way to do that. And the best part is for owners and operators is there is no cost for y'all to do so. So that's the quick and dirty, and obviously want to get into some of the meatier portions, but that is the general overview of what Flex is, simply giving residents flexibility in how they pay their rent while ensuring properties receive full funds, guaranteed, no clawbacks, no NSFs, on the first of every month.
Amazing. So can you give us an example of how it would work? New resident comes in. Do they need to apply for this while on site? Is it something that they take off when they go home? Kind of walk us through this, the procedure.
Yeah. So first and foremost, Flex is a consumer-facing product. So there's an app and there's a website. So any resident across the nation can go and create a Flex account. That being said, the only way a resident can use Flex is if that property has gone into a partnership, or I call partnership loosely, has agreed to offer flex at their property. And so when that happens, yes, new resident, existing resident, whatever the current communication process is to those residents, that's how they find out about flex. And then it's up to them to sign up. It is completely optional. There are no requirements. It's month to month. But we see a lot of our partners, at least Julie, y'all's property probably does this, specifically putting flyers in new resident packets. Hey, you just moved in. Flex is an additional amenity. Like, we encourage you to sign up because for your property, again, you are guaranteed those funds, and that resident has an additional way to pay rent, which traditionally is credit card, debit, ACH. What I like to say is flex is better than debit and cheaper than credit. It's better than the debit ACH check option because you get that flexibility. You don't liquidate your funds at the beginning of the month, versus a credit card where there's high interest, high APR, high fees associated with it. And flex comes in and still gives you the flexibility that a credit card seemingly offers, but without any of that downside risk of going into further and further debt.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands this. So from a ownership standpoint, you're getting paid on the first of the month from somebody who has this flex relationship. Okay. They get paid. We as the operators get paid. And then flex, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, JE, but you go to the client and say, okay, you need to pay us on the first, and then the flexibility is they could make a payment to you later in the month, right? So
Correct.
think about that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So most, if not all, properties today have some sort of online payment option for the residents. Flex already has an existing integration built out with whatever that portal is. Today, arguably, you name it, and we can work with it. There's almost no limits to that. And so the way that works is the first, Flex will pay just on behalf of the resident, and you'll see the ledger update accordingly. You'll see that $2,500 payment zeroed out. You'll see zero, notation off to the side, Flex. And then, yes, that resident has to pay us a portion at the beginning of the month and a portion at any other date that they choose. So the way I like to do it is like, think of a $2,000 rent example. If they want to split it 50-50, $1,000 on the first, $1,000 on, let's call it the 15th, because that's their second pay schedule that month.
I mean, incredible for somebody paying rent. The other thing I want to have you talk about is somebody that may not have a credit score, a high enough credit score. You're going in on behalf of them, right? Kind of using your credit, saying, hey, they're paying us. We're going to take that on. And it helps this resident build their credit score. So talk a little bit about that, JE.
Yeah, absolutely. So simply by using Flex, we have a relationship with the credit bureaus so that when residents pay rent, we're able to report that positively through the bureaus. So the residents can then, just simply by paying rent like they're supposed to every single month, improve credit scores. There's an event called NAA. Flex goes to it every single year. Last year, I met with someone whose credit score improved by 60 points because they'd been using Flex for 2.5 years. And just every single month, they used Flex, able to improve their credit score, which, I mean, everyone on this call can attest to the importance of credit, specifically in the US, where like that's a lower car payment. That's the ability to qualify for a better loan with Julie. Like, like you name it, the advantages. And especially as you mentioned, Julie, like moving down to your affordable, your Section 8, your LIHTC, your workforce housing, like the ability to build credit is just that much more important. And so, yeah, it's frankly probably one of my favorite parts about Flex.
It is such a great tool. And the fact that your operator as a property management can be, helping these residents. it also creates this wonderful relationship, long-term relationship, hopefully, that you've given insight to these residents that may have not thought that they could afford to live here or been able to qualify. So just
Yeah,
great.
and yeah, I mean, and even to like touch on that, um, like there's a lot of the questions we get asked is like, well, my residents won't use flex. And we get that oddly enough from both your luxury apartments all the way down to your affordable apartments. Um, and it's simply a question of like, well, one, like, how do you know? And most operators are like, hey, we vet people at the front door, but we never talk to them or like check back in with them to see where they're at. Because the testament of the last 4 years is everything's been in flux. Who knows what happens behind closed doors? And there's also been this surge of flexible payment options outside of the rental space. Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay. If you shop on Amazon, go to Target, go to Nordstrom, there's the ability to buy something today and pay for it over time. Now, granted, I'm going to distance Flex a little bit from those because those do have interest associated with it, where Flex does not. It is a single fee. That's it.
Say that one
Yes,
more
Julie.
time, please. Say that one more time because this is huge. How many residents put rent on their credit card? So think about that. Flex can be an no fee option. So restate that.
Yeah. So any credit card today, one, when you use a credit card, swipe a credit card at your property, it's typically 2.5%, 3%. So already an expense. Then, if for whatever reason you don't pay it off, you can't pay it off, you start piling on APR, start piling on interest, start digging yourself into a debt hole that for most is very difficult to get themselves out of, where Flex doesn't allow that. And so there, I think I got a question about who said like the fees. So Flex for market rate properties, $14.99. For affordable, it's $6.99. And again, that's only when they decide they want to use Flex in that month. Um, so significantly cheaper than a credit card.
So you're saying it'll cost $6.99 for this service.
Yeah,
Is it,
at an
am I
affordable property. And that's only that's what the resident will pay. And again, it is optional, but I would argue that for a lot, even swiping a debit card is $3 or $4. So
yeah.
an extra $2 is
And
not
no
much.
and no interest rate. I mean, that's
Yes.
it's truly amazing. So the flexibility for the resident, flexibility, the cost associated is better than your debit, any of those. No late fees from the operator, right? You're not late on your rent, building credit. It's the half the cost of, some of these other, I don't think we talked about that, but you can pay, you did talk a little bit about that. You can pay half at the beginning of the month and half of the other at the middle of the month. That's flexibility, 100%, right? Credit cards are 3%. Bad credit, it builds this. And you can put in, they can help them with budgeting. Who helps you with budgeting? Your mother left you and said, good luck. These guys are helping you budget. Truly amazing. All right. What about from an operator standpoint? Okay. That's why we being operators, we need to know what the value is here. So if you could just kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the important part.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of avenues to get into, but I think the first one that comes to mind is, and Julie, I'm curious to see if you guys have seen this as well, but we have found that, and let me back up real fast. So at last month, April 1st, we paid for 361,000 residents across the U.S. And so Flex is not it's not small. It's not like a one-off. For all you Texas folks, we're offered in just over 50% of all apartments throughout all of Texas, operational in all 50 states, and growing by roughly 300 to 350,000 units a month. I say that not to brag, but to say like we've been in the space for a while, and we've proven proven ourselves to not just be like a fluke product that only a few decide to use. But that being said, across the residents, across the 360,000 residents that paid last month and that historically have paid, we see that they stay at properties and renew their lease 2 times more likely, 2 times more often than those that do not use flex. And I think that's really interesting, and especially for operators, is one, you're looking to increase rents, which we'll get into here in a second. But two, you want to keep residents in there so you don't have to deal with vacancy, you don't have to deal with turn costs, you don't have to deal with trying to find someone else to move into that property. That's huge. And then just from like that leasing and raising rent perspective, flex offers a very unique value here, which frankly, my partners have like told me about, where they're like, hey, sometimes rent prices at some of these properties are like hard, like it's a hard pill for these future residents to swallow. So we pitch flex to say, hey, it could be $3,000 or it's $1,500 paid, bi-monthly. And they're like, residents like, oh, that's like way easier, way more digestible, makes way more sense. I like the sound of that better. And so it's quicker leasing time, as well as being able to upcharge rent, because it's still going to be affordable for residents, where again, they're not liquidating funds at the beginning of the month, but rather splitting it out. And then lastly, I would say in Texas, it's less of a distinguishing point now, just because we're in so many markets, but like it still has this aspect of, one, I care for my residents, and two, not every property around me offers flex. So you still get that differentiating piece of, hey, I'm looking at a two bed, 1 bath at these 3 properties at this intersection. One of them offers flex. Well, that might be the deal breaker to draw them to your property, all else being equal. So just a very unique tool. And again, flex costs nothing for you to offer. There's no contract for you to sign. It can get set up in about 15 minutes. So we try to make it as easy as humanly possible for properties to say, yeah, sure, why not try it? Because we view it as a no risk offering to you. You collect more rent, and I mean, one could argue, Julie would argue, you get exceedingly more than the free that it takes to sign up for flex.
It's amazing. So the couple other things that we did talk about is it saves time for the staff, because
Yes.
you're only running your payables or your receivables once, right? Once a month, you're receiving that income, not twice. The resident pays twice to them, but they pay me, the operator, once. So that's fantastic.
Well, and sites love it because, correct, one, they don't have to chase down residents all the time. If they have a funky resident, they can say, hey, please sign up with flex, so that I don't have to go knock on your door 4 times throughout the month and like create my own in-house payment plan, which is, as everyone can attest to, kind of like time consuming, to say the least. But again, you're improving your collections. You have bills you need to pay. Like, would it be better to collect more of that up front and in full, rather than sporadically throughout the month? And happy to get into the late fees as well, because it's a really interesting conversation. But sometimes people are like, well, late fees are a line item that I'm worried about and that I have to write about, which is totally valid. I don't have any hard evidence, only like anecdotal evidence from partners, but they're like, look, if late fee is great, but if I have to take up a bunch of my time to, one, start filing late fees, then I have to worry about evictions. Then if I do evictions, then I have to carve out time to go to court. There's a fee associated with that. Yeah. And then the bad debt that I get, I was like, how much of that do I actually collect? Or is it worthwhile to simply collect that on the first and not even worry about it on the back end?
I mean, this seems like a total no-brainer. Just a no-brainer. So you also said that your employees of the property management company can use Flex for free. Is that correct?
Yep. So here's the beauty of it. Anyone that is on staff of one of our partners, if they live at a property that offers Flex, whether it's your property or someone else's property, Flex, there is no fee associated to use Flex. So they can use Flex, they can build their credit, they can split up their rent, and it's just like an employee benefit, if you will, to offer to your employees just for working with you.
That's great. It's a great benefit. So remember, cost is zero to the operator. I thought it was really interesting that you did mention that you have 361,000 people that you're collecting, right? What does that
Correct.
mean in millions of dollars that you are taking in? This is a mind blower, you guys. How much is that?
Yeah, it's north of $550 million in guaranteed rent that we pay each month.
Every month, right? So, from a lender standpoint, one of the biggest challenges for getting these loans across is the economic vacancy. It's the loss to lease, the bad debt. Okay, if you guys are thinking about buying a property and they have this is a good thought process that, hey, we need flex. I'm going to implement flex and I'm going to raise that day one. So from a lender standpoint, that's they love to hear that your economic vacancy, but keep in mind, economic vacancy, it pulls away from your proceeds. So if you're a current operator and you're not using flex and you're thinking about selling, I would implement flex now so you can get your economic vacancy down and your value goes up always, right? So, all right, what else? What other things do you have to share with us?
Yeah, so I mean, last thing I'll say is like one, I'll put my information. I already put my information in the chat, but to spare you guys from having to scroll all the way back, I'll drop it in again. I'm available. I'm more than happy to like chat. Whether you want to own property, whether you do own property, whether you want to own, I mean, whether you want to manage property, whether you already manage property. Like I'm happy. I'm an open book. I know every property has a unique case for it. And so I'm happy to like dive into that because obviously at the end of the day, here's the thing. We want flex to make sense for you, for your portfolio, and for your residents. And while I would love to say everyone will use flex, as Julie mentioned, it's not the case. 10 to 20% of residents we see using flex. But like that's a lot, frankly, of residents using flex and growing every single month. So the last thing I would say is let me be a resource. Happy to help out. And I mean, obviously, Julie has used Flex and can attest to it, but I'm happy to get you connected if there's other specific regions. If you want to talk to someone in Washington, if you want to talk to someone in Florida, in the Carolinas, New Mexico, like we have partners. I think as of today, we just passed 1,200 partners across the U.S. So there are plenty in each state, in each city for us to connect you to. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm happy to do that as well. Our website is getflex.com if you want to peruse it. And then you can find us in the App Store, whether it's Apple or Google. If you want to look at resident reviews, I believe there's like 90,000 reviews, and I think it's at a 4.7 out of 5 stars. So again, feel free to like do your own due diligence. But I'm pretty confident you'll see the value in Flex. But Julie, I really appreciate you having me on as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's open it up for discussion. I know one of the questions was, can you give us provide us a mini list of softwares that Flex integrates with, such as Yardi, Resman, RealPage? What do you got there?
Yardi, Resman, RealPage, Entrata, Appfolio, Manage America, Rent Manager. If there's any specific one that I'm missing that you guys want me to let you know, I will. But those are like the majority that we work with.
Now, do you need to have a minimum amount? No, it
yes,
could be.
Appfolio.
Okay.
And yes,
it could be
question.
One.
So if you manage a single family home and you use Appfolio, like you can offer Flex. We work with Greystar, who is the largest property manager in the US. We work with them. So, and anyone in between. So there is no minimums from a dollar amount. There is no minimum amount of rent that a resident has to owe. There is no maximum amount. It's, if you're familiar with Bozzuto, they're a well-known luxury apartment community management company.
Mm.
We work with them and we see a lot of success with them. For the affordable side of things, yes, we can work with affordables that have vouchers. The way our system works, the way our integrations are built out with the Real Pages, the Yardis, the Entradas, the Appfolios, we're able to distinguish the charge codes of that of which the subsidy pays versus that which the resident is responsible for. And so, yes, Flex in that instance would just work with the resident portion. Subsidy would keep paying what it normally does. Resident could split up their amount that they owe accordingly.
Now, do those payments, are they always twice a month, or can the resident do 3 times, once a month, once a week? How does that get determined?
Yeah, so oddly enough, so I've been at the company for 2.5 years. Before I started, they used to offer residents the ability to split it up as many times as you want. 96% of residents decided they only wanted to pay it twice. So we said, let's just make it simple. It'll be twice. But when it comes to flexibility, we've been using the 15th as an example. It can be the 10th, it can be the 12th, it can be the 25th, all the way to the last day of the month. Everyone's situation is different. So we want to give that resident the ability to make whatever decision is best for their specific needs.
Got it. Okay. And then, yeah, you did talk about all assets. How about different asset classes? Like, for instance, an office, a business office.
Okay, good. Yeah, so anything that you have a renter that resides, like this being their home. So mobile home parks, RV parks, manufactured housing, apartments. We don't currently work with office or storage. Storage is the one that everyone asks about. There are some off case scenarios where we can, but for simplicity, we don't.
Okay, I know that I was thinking this, and then Daraj also said, what happens if someone doesn't pay you? Now, that's not for me to worry about as the operator, but maybe you could walk us through that, how that gets processed from your side and the resident.
Totally. So yeah, for the operator side of things, you've collected rent. We have paid you. We call those guaranteed for a reason because we're not going to ask for them back. So on the operator side of things, they've collected, we'll use April example. They collected April rent. They have nothing to worry about. From the resident side, from Flex's side. So again, like I mentioned before, residents have flexibility to keep moving that payment option to hopefully be able to make that second payment. If they don't, we will communicate with that resident on the last day of the month. Communication is similar to the following of, hey, you haven't paid Flex your second payment. Tomorrow is the 1st. You have an obligation to your property to pay them. You will not be able to use Flex because you haven't made your second payment, but pay them with whatever payment option they have available. Once you do, we'll work with you to get caught back up so that you can use Flex again. I say all this, we have a 99.7% collections rate. It is a very, very, very one-off situation that a resident doesn't pay Flex back. If they do, though, that's our risk. That's our responsibility. There are no fees associated with it for the resident. There are no fees associated with the property. There is no interest. We will work with the resident to get them caught back up so that they can then use Flex again.
Fantastic. Does the manager get a notice of the second payment that wasn't made, or is that completely non-transparent?
Simple form is it's not transparent. The way you're going to know is if you haven't collected rent the following month by whenever you start assessing fees, whether that's debit, ACH, credit. If you haven't received it, then they, for whatever reason, probably haven't paid Flex back. But the reason, one, that's like private information between us and the resident. I like to compare it to like if a resident swiped their Chase card, if they don't pay Chase back, Chase doesn't come notifying everyone that they swiped their card at. this guy hasn't paid his chase card. Similar concept there, where we won't notify you. There are ways you can track it. Like I mentioned, if you haven't received money on the 5th, and that's when you start kicking in late fees, you follow your operational processes. There's no need to do anything different.
Wow.
Good questions.
Yeah, these are great. Any other questions in the house? Those are all my questions. I know that Paula had a question about all of the what they can include. So you can include the water, the well, if it's a rubs, along with all of those other fees.
Yeah, so whatever is baked into that ledger. I know every management group does it different. So to name a few, carport, pet fees, utilities, miscellaneous charges. So whatever's on that ledger balance, that's the amount that we're gonna read and pay. So for most, it is rent, utilities, and maybe one of the others of
Garbage,
carport or
trash.
pet fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. And what about eviction process? Would there be a delay on the eviction process then if they haven't paid you and they're not going to pay us? We can start on the 5th
I'm,
day.
I mean, technically, if you could think of it as like a 1 month delinquency shield, to where, yes, Flex would theoretically delay if they cannot pay their rent. Yes, would delay that eviction process. Again, the vast majority of the time, residents are going to pay Flex back so they can continue to stay at your property. So we very rarely run into that, but that could potentially be the case.
Yeah.
Truly.
What we're seeing a lot of is fraud.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if this eliminates that or if we just had a person go to their bank and pull 6 months of rent and said, I didn't want to pay this. And they pulled it out of our account. Honest to God, that is so ridiculous. So now we have to contest it. Yes, they lived here. Yes, it's just a big hassle. Again, why you'd want to work with Flex. I don't have to go, deal with that. But fraud is huge right now. So is this something that you're also experiencing, and can you nip it in the bud, or how's that?
Yeah, so we're not seeing much in the way of fraud on our side. We have a very robust like analytics and underwriting team on our end. Um, so yes, it does pop up where a resident's like, "Hey, I want to pay for 6 months worth of rent." However, most of where that gets caught is because we have that integration and we see, hey, the resident owes $3,100 or $1,800. Like that's the amount that we would pay versus the $6,000 to $12,000 that they might want us to pay.
Yeah, good,
Yeah.
really great, good point. Is
Um,
there a minimum
there's
credit
a
score y'all have to work with?
Yeah, so great question. So like I mentioned with the internal underwriting team, there essentially is no minimum credit score for some of the like super 350, 450, 100 credit score type. We might offer rather than a 50-50 split, like a 70-30 split, which still allows them some flexibility, but it also helps prevent, just because they have a lack of credit, the risk on our side. So their rent's $1,000, they would be responsible for $700 upfront and split the remaining 300 later on. But again, as they're able to improve their credit score with Flex, they can then start minimizing that gap to where they'd be at 50-50 in no time. Hope that helps.
Fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely. So remember, getflex.com. That's how you can reach out to J.E. Steiner. Is that right? Is that how we would want to get a hold of you, or what would be another
Yeah,
way?
I mean, a number. I just dropped my information. Text me, call me, email me, connect on LinkedIn. If you want to scroll through our website first, there's a contact us form there. Feel free to like fill that out, and it's basically requesting a salesperson to reach out to you. Truly, whatever your preference is, but I'm available to hop on any call with anyone.
All right. So for those that are on the YouTube channel and rewatching this, so if you want to get a hold of J.E. Steiner, 636-236-3211. That's his phone number. Don't dial and hang up. Come on, let's not do that. But J.E. Steiner, J.E.Steiner, Steiner at getflex.com. That'll get you his email. Jump on a call, communicate that way. Anybody else in the room? We're having a live conversation. Step up to the microphone and let's hear what questions you might have if we haven't already covered it. Paula?
There's one more in the chat I do want to address, which is in simple form. If a property has any questions, who do they reach out to? If a resident has questions, who do they reach out to? We have a US based support team. So for both any of our partners, we have a partner team. For any residents, we have a resident team. So they can reach out to us at any point in time. Most of the time, everything can get resolved in the app. It's pretty intuitive, but if a resident needs to communicate with someone, we're available. We have a team dedicated for the success of both, again, our partners and our residents.
Fantastic. All right. Well, this has been a treat. Edison has a question.
Yeah, I got a question. So, Jay, it's good to see you. I know we talked a while back. Need to get together.
Yep.
And I might have missed this, but and I know the question has come up in the chat about Section 8 vouchers and things of that nature. How that works or integrates with that?
Yeah, so it's the same across the board. There's slight nuances based on the property management system and rent portal that you would offer to your residents. The simple answer is we're able to read. We have pre-built integrations built out with all those major providers. Again, the Real Pages, the Yardis, the Entradas, you name it. So we're able to read the charge codes that are associated for those residents. So if there's subsidies, let's say it's $1,000, subsidy pays $500, residents responsible for $500. We're able to read so that we would only pay the $500 that the resident is responsible for. And so those vouchers keep coming in for the other $500. So in that case, the resident could split up the amount only that they owe, not the total rent amount. Does that make sense and answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you.
That makes sense. All right, Jeannie.
So obviously you don't get 100% of people you talk to sign up. Why don't people? I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. What are the reasons people don't sign up with you?
From a resident perspective or from like a partner, like property side of things?
Property manager, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is going to sound silly. The majority of the time, the reason someone doesn't sign up with us is because Flex is an unfamiliar concept. It's new, it's different. They're unfamiliar with flexible payment options, and they don't want to, quote unquote, take the jump, take the step to say, I want to learn about this. The other reason is I mean, everyone on here is very familiar with the property world. Like, people are really, really busy. And so sometimes it's hard to nail down a time to like discuss Flex, even though I can email and hop on a quick phone call with someone and like explain the benefits. A lot of people want to see like a presentation or like sit down and have a Q&A, but they're really busy and they don't feel like they can carve out the time, which like I have to be respectful of. Like, the amount of folks I talk to that have 1,200 unread emails and are working 80 hours a week, like, it's a lot.
I mean, this is a no-brainer. And I will tell you, that is the honest to God truth, what you just said. Even my partner said, we were late to the game. We just were too busy to get on a call. And it has made a huge difference. And, you know, again, it's not just for the B and C product. It is for A's as well, because A's, while they want to feel like they are being, served, that they're the most important, they are also putting themselves at the highest debt because they want to have this appearance. So providing this is, you don't want to some people might say, well, that's not kind of our resident. Well, if you think about it and you look at the demographics, this may be the most helpful for them because they want to continue to have this appearance and be able to, figure out their monthly payments in a little bit different way.
And I always joke, like, keeping up with the Joneses is very real. Like, if you first start out your career, you're barely making ends meet. Like, you don't mind driving the beater, you don't mind staying in a like 1-bedroom apartment at the edge of town, maybe not in the nicer area, but like and I found myself guilty of this. This is why I'm saying it. But like, and as you like move up in your career and you like find a little bit more success, you start making a little bit more money. You don't keep the same, for the most part, I'm generalizing here, but like, you don't typically keep the same lifestyle. It's like, oh, I can afford a nicer car. Maybe I'll take out a car payment. That I might be stretching myself. Oh, I can go live in a nicer apartment. Oh, now I want to like show off to my friends that I can do X, Y, Z. It's a very real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. And it's just one little item that may be able to resolve so many things for both the resident and for the operator. And again, in these times where NOI is not growing, this is a great opportunity to resolve that economic vacancy, to bring in higher quality residents that may like this option. So, Edison.
Thank you.
And it's kind of building on that, why people don't, participate with this. And, I can see for the operator side, but for the tenant side, what obstacles do you run into there and why they wouldn't utilize the service? Do they just prefer to save the $6.99 a month and write a check? Or, I mean, what's the real reason?
Yeah, no, I mean, great question. So yes, for some, it's the fee is like the sticking point. For others, it's technology. They're accustomed to paying with check and money order. And so I don't want to break from the norm. And then I would say for the rest is, if a resident isn't aware that Flex is available to them, then they're not naturally going to use Flex. So we have like millions upon millions of units that Flex is available in. But if the property never communicates to the residents that Flex is available, then a resident will never use Flex because they're unaware of it. And again, it's not for everyone. Some people they're used to saying, hey, I pay all of my bills in one payment. And that's how I was raised. It's, hey, mortgage, one payment, car, one payment, all of your bills, one payment. Like, stay out of any like quote unquote flexibility. Like, if you get a bill, pay it off. And like, that's a lot of residents' mindset, but I would say it probably fits into those 3 buckets.
Yeah. And it's not for everybody in your property. It could just be for 5 people in your property. It's not everybody has to use it. It's just, and again, it could be used on a monthly, maybe this month I'm not going to get paid. I didn't work as many hours this month, so I need a little bit longer. You can have Flex for that month. It doesn't have to be every month. So.
And Julie, I think you and I chatted about this. Like, think of Flex almost like the Uber app, where you download the Uber app, but you call an Uber when you need an Uber. Like, that is essentially how Flex works. If you need to call an Uber every month, you call an Uber every month. If you call it, once a quarter, great, it's there for you. If it's just, hey, I seldomly once a year need an Uber to the airport, then you use it then. It's truly whatever your needs are, use it as you please. It is an option that is available for your residents and for you to offer to your residents.
That is so, I can see that picture in my mind. So that's awesome. I love that example. All right. I think that's it. Unless Jeannie, you've got another question. No, you're good. All right. So this is it. J.E., thank you again for joining us tonight.